Welcome to the Freight Project podcast, brought to you by Cerasis, a North American third-party logistics company providing shippers transportation management technology and solutions.
On today's The Freight Project podcast episode, I welcome back Cerasis National Sales Manager Roger Jones to give his take on what he sees in the marketplace in the way of trends in freight and transportation for this new year, 2019. Happy New Year to all you Freight Project podcast listeners out there. Roger will also share with you, despite any new sweeping trends and potential new technology investments, why it's important more than ever for shippers to have sound fundamentals when it comes to managing freight. Roger then gives his insights on what is driving the request for adding a final mile and white glove options capabilities in today's transportation management systems like our very own Cerasis Raider. I then ask Roger, over his now 30-year freight and transportation career, to share what is a trend that he has seen that has come to fruition that really has changed the freight world significantly, and also what are some huge flops he's heard of that have never quite panned out. And while you're here, make sure you register for our webinar on freight and transportation trends for 2019 by going to cerasis.com and clicking on the Register Now button at the top of our website. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Freight Project Podcast.
Welcome back to the Freight Project Podcast, Roger. Thanks for your time today. And I know our audience is going to look forward to hearing from you about our topic of the day, freight and transportation trends. So as we open this brand new year, 2019, time flies, trends in any industry are top of mind. Now, we typically write about trends, and we're doing that currently on our blog as it relates to many new things like technology, new practices, or perhaps any new regulations with the new year or new Congress. So what do you think yourself are the biggest trends that the industry is going to see in 2019?
That's a great question, Adam. I think you do write a lot in your blogs about this information. You cover so many topics around it. So my first statement is, if you're not looking at some of the stuff that we're putting out there, definitely go to that as a resource. And you'll see things around the topics of capacity crunch, high driver turnover, increased demand in e-commerce, and really what that looks like. And I'll talk more about that later on here. But also, rate increases are going to take place. Fuel costs are up and down. And then I would say one of the biggest things that has challenged the marketplace so far has been the whole ELD mandate and what that's done to truck availability, driver availability, on-road time availability. So all those from a now looking forward and kind of what's impacted us in 2018 are huge areas to think about. The two, though, that I really want to focus on that are equally as relevant, if not more, really are those areas of e-commerce and competing against that Amazon and Wayfairs of this world type mentality. Also, the automation and integration of TMS directly into systems like an ERP in organizations, et cetera. So there's those two areas for me as we head into 2019. With everything else aforementioned there, those are the two areas that we see the biggest demand, the biggest change, and really what customers are asking us to assist with the most.
Yeah, so you're on the front lines, you're on sales calls with our account executives, you're working with our current customers, and especially the larger ones as they have more complex needs. And they're looking at trends, and that's great for us to focus on trends, and those are a slew of trends that people need to look out for. We all have to look to the future unless we get, and if we don't, we'll get blindsided by potentially disruptive market changes or technologies that could make any company go bankrupt. You can think of the taxis when Uber came along, but with any shiny object, new tool, trends can kind of be like that. They can distract shippers away from the fundamentals, and since that is possible, and people still need to be good at the fundamentals, what are some of those fundamentals that shippers should still focus on that you're still reminding our customers and prospects about as it relates to transportation and freight in 2019?
I love the word used fundamentals because I think that's where shippers really get caught up in today's marketplace, they really have to have an insightful review of their transportation programs and platforms so they understand the baseline, where they are, what revisions might need to be put in place, what changes might need to be put in place. I think too often shippers are reluctant to change, or if they get caught up chasing that shiny object out in the marketplace, they don't take the time to build those needed fundamentals to make sure they're tapping into multiple parts of their organization, addressing the needs not only for now, but making sure they're scalable and into the future. So we really see two things that are happening out there when it comes to a company that's looking at its transportation and trying to understand how they fit into the marketplace, how they're aligning to their competitors. And those two areas are what do we look like today? What does our structure, our process, our procedure look like today? And where do we need to scale to tomorrow? As we deal with a lot of these companies, what we find is they don't look at the fundamentals of today to build for to tomorrow. They start chasing things one step at a time, shooting over here, looking at different areas, and they're piecemealing their supply chain together, thinking that they're reacting quickly to a marketplace when it needs to be more strategy on the front end and then tactical execution on the back end. At Cerasis, we see this happening more and more as we are involved in boardroom discussions more than ever and less involved in warehouse discussions. Eventually we'll get to the tactical, but the key is to have it aligned throughout the whole organization. I think the one change we've seen in the last couple of years is we started working more with C-level visionaries, IT groups, purchasing, supply chain, finance, e-commerce teams, etc., not specifically just the people who are moving freight in the transportation side. Because all the solutions that are coming into play now that can help from a technology perspective and can help from a customer care perspective really wrap around the whole organization. It's not just a transportation issue anymore. We do our best when we work to fully understand the procedures and processes that our customers use today and work with them to create a transportation solution that empowers them to completely take advantage of their product and marketplace in the future. And naturally, as we work to diligently help them, we want to make sure we're putting the right solutions and ensure that they're scalable as well as their business grows.
I think that's, it's really interesting. Beginning of the year, we all get caught up on trends. What are we going to do? And what you're basically saying is all of those trends you see, all those improvements you want to make, any of those new technology platforms you want to put in place to help you manage transportation better. If you do those things and your underlying fundamentals aren't sound and your leadership's not bought in, and it's not an organizational push towards having the fundamentals mastered so you can enact sustainable change with any new thing, if those fundamentals aren't right and those aren't all in place and leadership's not involved, well, it's only going to shine a big bright light on those underlying inefficiencies. And when you do purchase that new shiny tool and you start applying it, but it's not as effective because those underlying fundamentals are broken, you've pretty much lost your shirt on that investment and the time spent trying to get everyone to use it. So it's really good that you use the term right solutions and ensure they are scalable for future enhancements. So that's a really good point.
I couldn't agree with that more. One quick thing, Adam, you and I talk about this a lot, and one of the biggest challenges that we see in the marketplace today is companies do react to competitive pressures. They react to that shiny object sometimes, and they'll put in processes and procedures, and they're trying to adjust quickly. And what it does is it backloads their cost structure. So while they're still selling the products for the same on the front end, their cost on the back end is starting to increase or change dramatically. And it's a lagging indicator that they don't really capture well. So at that point, all of a sudden, maybe changes that were made 6 months ago start showing up to the bottom line much differently than what they anticipated. And we try to keep companies ahead of that curve and making sure we're putting the right solutions in so that in the end, there's no surprises, there's no backlash to previous decisions made, and we're leading that as an indicator versus a following indicator.
That's right. Well, change management, it's a complex thing. And if you have the right expert partner at your side, then they can make sure you are reminded of everything that goes into any change. And so now that we've talked about some of the trends and how it's important, even though trends are important to look at, that you also need to have strong fundamentals. Let's look forward at 2019 at Cerasis. So you're in the mix of, talking to prospects, talking to customers. You've been in the industry for quite some time. So you're really close to the front lines of what, is really going on. And I know one of the most exciting products our development team is working on because of that feedback from customers and prospects is adding final mile and white glove services along the other surface modes that we manage already in our TMS, the Cerasis Rater. We're developing this not because we think it's, something we just need to do or we heard about, but because the industry really wants it. But why are they wanting it? What is the reasons we're having requests for that capability for final mile and white glove in our TMS?
Well, let's face it, e-commerce is not going away. I really look at most businesses today. One of the first questions we ask them is, what does your e-commerce platform look like? And I'm still shocked to have the answer of, we're not in that space yet. Given all the opportunities and the just-in-time demand that's in the marketplace, more and more products are being offered every day in areas that were not imagined 2 to 3 years ago from an e-commerce perspective. The things that you can order today have delivered by tomorrow, the next day, whatever time frame you're looking for. It's out there, and it's more and more robust every time you turn around. And the reality is, if you don't have an e-commerce platform today, regardless of what industry you're in, you're falling behind and you're missing prospect opportunities. Yeah, and to go along with that, transportation shipping has become an integral part of that profitability discussion. I mean, think about Amazon and Amazon Prime service. You can get 2-day shipping for free, the next day shipping for just a few dollars on each order. A lot of times that's even free. Same day shipping, that can be free. Can you compete with that as a company out there in the marketplace? A lot of companies think no, but the real answer to that is yes. That pricing is included somewhere. That shipping cost is included somewhere. So to compete against that, you may not have to win the shipping, quoting, and pricing scenario, but you have to be able to offer something. And they can win by giving things to their customers that delight them, that give them options, that let them make a decision right there on the screen. And that's what's key in the marketplace today. So when we're talking about things like final mile, white glove, that's the wave of the future in giving customers added services, added support, better flexibilities in shipping and how it's going to be delivered. You don't have to offer free shipping or even extraordinary same-day service, but you can create a shipping service that exceeds expectations and provides satisfaction. And a lot of times that's what the white glove and final mile type solutions produce. So we see that as being critical in the marketplace today. The more companies we talk to are going down that path of not just dropping something off at a local facility, but moving inside for them, possibly even assembling things at a location. So the needs are getting stronger and stronger in that personal extra service capability area. And that's why we're building our solutions to marry up to that.
That makes sense. The customer is the king now, and they have options, as Noral likes to say. Noral, one of our co-founders. And, I got to tell you, if I think about what you said there, delighting the customer, the thought I had in my head was, so there's a Hurricane Michael, and it delays my shipment of my brand new refrigerator, as an example, that I saved 2 years to get. It's top of the line. It brews my Keurig, and it has a camera where I can talk to my grandma from my fridge, something like that. And I'd be really upset and frustrated if there was a delay. And I'd probably forget that there was a hurricane, and I might blame the carrier or the shipper, even the manufacturer. But I tell you what, if a couple of people come in, deliver that, take away the old fridge and install it, and then show me how to make sure it's, technologically right and how to use it, I probably forget a little bit about that delay in shipping because I'm so excited I was helped by somebody coming in and installing it for me. So that's the experience, and I believe you're right. That's how shippers can continue to surprise and delight and compete against the Amazons and the Wayfairs of the world.
Absolutely.
Well, finally, you've been at this freight and shipping game for more than 30 years. Probably 60 years. I'll just double it. But what is a trend you saw that came to fruition that changed the freight world significantly? And maybe what are some huge flops you've heard that, never quite panned out, but were supposed to change the world?
Well, first of all, in regards to the age reference, our offices are really close to each other. And if I have to walk in there and tackle you and fight over this age difference thing, we're going to have to do that.
I'll pass. I think I'd lose.
To restate your question, you asked me what are some of the things that have not come to fruition that maybe people thought they would, and some things that really have. I think back really about something that just flopped initially, and then we've just talked about it, and that's that e-commerce space kind of created a life of its own. I remember back when I was working for one of the big two parcel carriers, the brown one, and there were meetings on how we were not going to carry the business from the e-commerce order entry platform. They did, as a company, they didn't want the residential deliveries. They were not profitable. Their pricing model didn't support it. And as a company, we were trying to build initiatives and look for ways to avoid bringing those customers on and push that business away. And I think about that at that time and how short-sighted as an organization and really as multiple organizations were, because nobody wanted that business. Everything was being pushed to the post office. Everything was, how do we not carry this type of stuff and just go after the more cost-effective and profitable, business that's out there, basically B2B. And that short-sightedness really allowed companies like Amazon to come in and create not only their own distribution model, but start providing services out into the delivery area. And now they're competing head to head with, a UPS and a FedEx in those deliveries. And they've pushed hard to make it into a profitable machine that's generating jobs in the marketplace. And it all really started back in a time when e-commerce was just launching and the major carriers couldn't wrap their hands around how to price it and what to do with it. And it allowed for competitive entry. So that was one of the biggest flops I've seen in the industry in the last 30 years, was not recognizing what was going to happen and where it was going to go. And that goes for a lot of companies. It's why we talked earlier about if you're not in the e-commerce platform today with your products, that you're missing a ton of opportunity. It has morphed into a world of its own. Opportunity, a million times bigger than what anybody ever thought it could be. And companies that embrace that and jumped on board have taken advantage of that. And companies that are late to the game are struggling to catch up now. And it's just a critical piece. And that's one of our goals, is naturally to help customers get there. And then you asked me, what have I seen that has really changed the industry? And I would have to say it is that TMS product that's out there today. As I look at what's happened, and some of your blogs that you've written, Adam, talk about the evolution of the TMS, and at one point only 20% of businesses had it, and then it got up to 30%, but it hasn't moved tremendously up the ladder as you would have expected, yet it's impacting the industry tenfold. And the reason for that is companies are just reluctant to change. It's not that they don't need it. It's not that it couldn't benefit them. But more importantly, their reluctance to change and continue to do things the way they used to do them has really caused some companies to lag behind in that area. The companies that have embraced it and looked at warehouse management systems, TMS systems, engulfing that technology option into the business unit and making sure that they're looking at their supply chain as a whole and looking at it as a profit center. Those are the companies that have taken leaps and bounds as far as the steps of getting their business model, to marry up to their overall corporate objectives. And that TMS piece for us is where we see the biggest opportunities, the biggest areas for gains, and it can hit so many parts of the organization, whether it's in your IT structure, order fulfillment, finance, everything from reporting at the C level, cost reduction, carrier management, price reductions from your order entry flow. There's just so many different areas that a TMS can touch. And we've seen that change so many companies as they've embraced that technology in the last few years.
Well, when it comes to big flops and big successes, I guess at the end of the day, it's all about how you act. And trends are nothing until you start to put together plans or you start to do your research and your due diligence to figure out which of these trends are going to matter to my company. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve? What do we need to achieve to continue to gain market share, to appease the customer service department and make sure our customers are happy? Is procurement happy, and are they able to procure the materials for us to manufacture this widget? Are we spending too much and it's hurting our EBITDA? And those are the kinds of questions that need to happen around any trend. And it sounds like what you're hearing from shippers is that they're asking those questions and they're needing a lot of expert partners who can guide them in the right direction so that they don't end up doing what UPS did and missing maybe an opportunity of a lifetime that could be in front of them. So, Roger, thank you so much for your thoughts in this early few weeks here in 2019 on the Freight Project podcast about what you're seeing on the front lines as you talk to shippers and what you think will impact them over the next couple of months. And we can't wait to have you back on the Freight Project podcast very soon.